Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today I'm going to be ranking all of the new drift cars that have been added into Grand Theft Auto Online, or the vehicles that have had the drift modification tuning added to them in online. Now we have one new car and 7 old cars that have this drift modification available for them. Now this will cost you $200,000 to add to these vehicles, so you do need to keep that in mind. And also you need to keep in mind that if you do this, to take it off, it will cost another $50,000, and if you want to add it back onto the car later, it will cost you that same $200,000 again. Now also, before you do this to the vehicle, you should make sure to fully upgrade it, because once the drift tuning is on the car, you will not be able to modify any performance aspects of these vehicles anymore until you remove the drift tuning, which again is going to cost you 50 grand. And before you ask, yes, the modifications actually do change the performance of the vehicles, so having the engine, transmission, turbo, brakes, suspension, and armor all do matter. Now they tell you that these will be removed from the vehicles once the drift modification is applied. Now this is only true for modifying the vehicle. You just won't be able to access these things, but the performance aspect is still attached to the car with or without the drift tuning. Make sure you fully upgrade the car and then put drift tuning on it, because if you don't do that, it will not have the same performance. Hit that like button for the boys. You guys have been smashing these like goals that I've just started doing recently. Let's go for 3,000 likes again on this video. You guys smashed the last one, you smashed the one before that. Let's go ahead and get started with the worst drift car out of all of the new ones at number 8. Alright guys, so to get things started at number 8, we have the Declassy Drift Yosemite, coming in at 981 grand to buy if you have the trade price, and $1,308,000 if you do not have the trade price. Now, just like the regular Drift Yosemite, even with the drift tuning, I found this vehicle to be extremely underwhelming. It was way harder to break traction, and it felt like the vehicle's size also made it a lot harder to deal with while drifting in the city and having to weave in and out of traffic. Now, maybe I need to spend more time with it, but for right now, it was definitely my least favorite out of them all. It just felt a lot slower. The traction was way harder to brake and actually get into a drift. It was just an underwhelming vehicle generally, and I don't really recommend picking it up. I think there's a lot better vehicles with this new drift tuning that you can have. So here at number 7, we have the Declassy Drift Tampa, the next one, coming in at $995,000. Now, sadly, similar to the Drift Yosemite, I think on the busy streets of Los Santos, the Tampa is just too big to drift effectively. When I did have space, it was very fun to drive and drift around. It was almost as good as the other vehicles on this list, but the overall size makes it a lot more of a chore to drift, and I feel like it also makes it a lot more of a chore to slide, because the Declassy Drift Tampa is actually a huge vehicle. So this is definitely something that you should keep in mind. I wish that this car was a little bit better. I would have liked to see it be, better than some of the other cars, but unfortunately it's just not that good. Rest in peace to Ken Block though. Now coming in at number 6, we have the Annis Euros at $1,350,000 with the trade price, or $1.8 million. The Annis Euros was the next best, although that is not saying much. This car gave me the same feeling I got when I drove the Annis Euros for the first time, which was an overwhelming sense of disappointment and being underwhelmed. I really want to love the Euros, and I was really hoping that the drift tuning could change how I felt about this car. But honestly, it felt worse than the rest of the tuners that also had the modification. I feel like there's just something about the Euros that is fundamentally broken, and it will never really sit right with me, unfortunately. It's not that bad. It's definitely better than the Drift Tampa as well as the Drift Yosemite, but it's not better than any of the other vehicles that have the modification available for them. So that's it for the Euros at number 6. Let's talk about number 5. Now at number 5, we have the Dinka Jester RR, coming in at $1,477,500 if you have the trade price, and $1,970,000 if you don't have the trade price. Now this is the first car I really had fun drifting. I think it's actually very good, and in part I'm sure that is due to its relatively small size in comparison to some of the other vehicles that I've already talked about. But I really do feel like there is a big difference in the performance and the handling in comparison to the Euros and the Declasse Drift Tampa and the Yosemite, of course, as well. This thing actually felt really good to drift. It felt exactly how I would have imagined that it would. A very good car, and it's definitely the first really good drift car on the list so far. Alright guys, the next up at number 4, we have one of the better drift cars, like even better than the Dink Adjuster RR, which was a huge leap ahead of the Annis Euros. And this is of course the Annis Remus, coming in at $1,027,500 to $1,370,000 if you don't have the trade price. Now the Remus is a little bit cheaper than the Adjuster RR, which automatically makes it a little bit better, I think, in my opinion, because it's just more affordable for you guys. And it's a lot longer than the Dink Adjuster RR, which I think gives it a bit more of a challenging aspect to drive, but it also just simply feels better to drive. And when you do hit satisfying corners with it, despite the length, it just feels so much better. The Remus slides really nicely and it's very predictable, and the point in which it will swing like too far is very easy to gauge as opposed to the Jester. I felt like the Jester was like just oversteering and then oversteering way too much, and then I was flipped around behind myself, you know? But with the Remus, I feel like it's a lot harder to get to that point and it's easier to gauge it, and you can kind of avoid that. Overall, I feel like it does have a slight edge over the Dink Adjuster RR, and I think it is the better vehicle of the two for sure. Now next up we have the Fathom FR36. This is the brand new car from the Chop Shop DLC, coming in at $1,610,000. I think this is definitely one of the most consistent drift cars yet. Fair play though, it is also one of the cars that I have driven the absolute most out of all the drift cars. But I don't feel like it's necessarily the best. While being very consistent and generally very good, I think it does leave a bit to be desired. Overall, especially with the power out of a corner, it just feels a little weaker than I would like it to. Other than that, it's a fantastic car. The customization is awesome. The general drifting performance is very good, and you should probably buy one, but it's not necessarily the best of all the drift cars, that's for sure. Next up, we have the Annis ZR350, coming in at $1,211,350 if you have the trade price, and $1,615,000 if you do not have the trade price. The second best car of all of the drift cars is easily the ZR350. It felt amazing to drive, extremely consistent while also being relatively small and light. It's very simple to drive and easy to drift. I definitely like it the best out of all the cars on this list, and it is the one that I would recommend you to buy or add drift tuning to, because it is simply awesome. From the looks to the performance, it is definitely my favorite by far. However, that doesn't necessarily mean it is the best by far. That's just my opinion. I love this thing. I think it's very good. However, the vehicle that is at number 1 is even better. And of course, the vehicle at number 1 is the Karen Futo GTX, coming in at $1,192,500 to $1,590,000 if you don't have the trade price. This is easily the best car with the new drift tuning modification, simply because of how absolutely tiny this vehicle is and its extreme lightness. You can slide in and out of traffic so much easier in this car than any other car, all while having consistent power, delivery, and output from the vehicle. If you're looking to try out the new drift tuning, this is the car that you should do it with to learn, and once you've learned with it, you can get into some of the other cars. But overall, it is easily the best car to use the new drift tuning modification on. It's the easiest car to drift, it's the easiest one to drive through Los Santos with all the busy traffic and everything like that. And even out on the back roads and stuff where traffic isn't as much of an issue, it is still probably one of the nicest cars to drift overall. I think it's definitely the best car to use the new drift tuning on. It is just so damn good. Anyway guys, there you have it. That is my ranking of all of the new drift tunable cars and the new drift cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. If you guys enjoyed this video, a like is of course appreciated. If not, dislike. Subscribe to my channel if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.